Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
Oh my God, the Barbarian, he left the video and he's in our studio.
What? Where did he go?
Oh, good, he's doing the voice. Where'd your face paint go? You washed it off so quick.
Well, you know, I don't remember.
He wakes
That's
up.
fair. I mean, after Gen Con, there are just some things you don't remember.
Well, yeah, I did not get plastered or anything at Gen Con. I don't do that, but it was a great time. I loved it. Yeah,
That's very fair. I'm a teetotaler, so I wouldn't either. Just making some jokes.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, my voice is still messed up though. It's still like, you know.
So we are all back from Gen Con. I got in last night. I'm quickly running to do work today because I'm leaving on vacation tomorrow for a week. So today's my only free day. And you came back. When did you get back, Luke?
Last night around 9 p.m.
Yeah, I got back to around
Packed
10.
some stuff and crashed.
Yeah,
Up
actually,
early at 5.
Actually, I got in. I downloaded Baldur's Gate 3 update and built my character and started to play. That's what I did last night. And I only got like 2 hours in, but yeah.
How are you liking it so far?
Well, it's a Larian game. It's fantastic. I knew it would be. I mean, they smoothed it out. I mean, I played the intro before, and I know what to expect because I play. I'm a huge 2.5D, we call it 2.5D TTRPG player. I played Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale. I played every single Icewind Dale, including all the expansions, including like the Riddle one that like no one played. I played
Planescape Torment, right?
Planescape Torment, of course. I got it the day it came out. I actually have the box still.
I used to have the box.
The box was huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I played Baldur's Gate 2 a bit in college, and then Icewind Dales, both Icewind Dales. But you know, I never, for whatever reason, I always preferred to assemble my own party. So like even for Baldur's Gate 2, there was a hack where I could assemble my own party, you know, instead of using their pre-gens that you would just run across. I always found that to be much more satisfying than, and I know I miss out on like these stories and all this stuff that happens when you have like their cast in your party, but it never really, I always wanted to make my own party for whatever reason, you know?
Yeah, I definitely made my own party when I first played Baldur's Gate 2. And then I played it again, and I did take the companions that time because I wanted to see what their deal was.
Yeah.
Oh, I like Minsk and all that. The companions are so good. I mean, I always think I like the. I'm there for the story.
Yeah.
Oh, I like Minsk. Whoops. I'm playing I decided to play a warlock because warlocks, you get to be a face. You get a 17 charisma. I like to have the high charisma because then you can do like all the really cool talking stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna definitely talk more about it. This is my jam, is these 3/4. Oh, of course, playing.
Let's do a stream about
Yeah,
that.
we're
maybe
gonna do a
next time.
stream about that. I know it's the hotness, and I don't want to get too. I can get into this really quick, so I'm gonna stop.
We had a super chat that's like on
Already?
topic, but we'll probably
We'll do that in
wait until we get into it.
Yeah, give me a second for though.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. If you saw us at Gen Con, hi, we're back. I'm back in my studio, back to my weird like bookshelf that everyone knows, and Luke's back to his look at that, his blue and red
I
and
have a
cat.
bookshelf too.
You
I
have
a
your
bookshelf
cat.
too. Yeah, my cat's right there. He's on a blanket. He's not supposed to be on.
Yeah, your cat. And then Mark is in the void.
I am in the void.
We need to put something on. Luke, you got to help out Mark, man. Look at he's
Get a movie
white
poster.
on white on white.
Get a movie poster and the
I
background.
actually had a painting that was behind me, but we figured out, Linda and I figured out that one of the things that was causing my the image to not work was that the light reflecting off of the painting messed up the camera and caused me to fade out to look even paler than I currently do, which was really weird.
How's
And
that
you have
possible?
the auto correction on. So if you turn off your like color settings, the automatic color settings, and manually adjust your color balance, that'll
Yeah.
take that.
Yeah. Turn off auto and then just sit there and fiddle with it till you look till you look good, and then that's what you
Yeah.
use. So
Yeah.
just try that later. Don't do it now. Yeah. You don't use auto because auto will always wash you out.
Yeah, you could actually, if you're adjusting yourself, you could put like some color in your face. You could make yourself however you want. You could be blue if you want, dude.
Yeah.
It's all possible.
Curse you, Otto!
Well, that's what happened. Everyone was seeing me at Gen Con. They're like, "Oh, you don't look anything like what you look like on the stream." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." Guess because they're used to me sitting down. That's why.
That's either a compliment or not.
I don't know
Yeah,
what it
I'm not
was.
sure.
I don't know what that was. But now it was great. It's like I was always sad. I was really sad yesterday. It's like because what I did is I spent a lot of time walking around the gaming area and just looking at people playing, and I'm just like everyone's just so happy and so relaxed, and it's just
Why did that make you sad?
because it's gonna be over, and it's like you had to go back to life, and it's just so special to see that. It's just so nice, and it's just it's
Well,
it-
when AI art puts everybody out of business and we all just get government stipends, we'll just be able to sit around and play games all day. Right?
AI everything.
Huh?
Well, we used to joke. My friends and I were like, we would joke about playing D&D in the retirement home, and it's getting closer and closer. That is going to start happening. I'm serious. We're like, we're getting closer to that age. We're closer to that age than not, where we're going to be sitting around and doing nothing but streaming and playing video and playing games. So that's my dream.
I mean, don't we kind of do that already to a certain extent? I mean, there's work involved, a lot of work, but we kind of do that, right?
Yeah. So once again, for those of you new, Steve Glicker from Roll for Combat. We have a big Kickstarter going on right now. We only have a week left, a week and a half, and you can see it at Kickstarter at rollforcombat.com or indigo.rollforcombat.com. It is a world book, lore book. It's got everything for you, whether you're a PC and you want to build characters, or you're a GM and you want to have tons of... We have 10 cities in there completely built out. You can take it. We have tons of lore. We have gods. We have so much in there. We have something for everything. We have tons of NPCs. We have dragons. We have 15 to 20 new dragons playing if you're Pathfinder.
Can't forget those.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. We have brand new dragons, the wild dragons. These don't exist, and they're fun because they're kind of friendly. They're actually not super evil, so they're good as NPCs and people you can both NPCs and monsters that you can even use as quest givers, or if you want to fight them, we have that in there too. But I kind of prefer, I always like it when dragons aren't necessarily protagonists, but something in between, where they can both be something that can kill you, but also something that you can talk with and be friendly with, because I find they're very fascinating. So we made sure we included those. There's a lot, and the PDF is going to come out next month. Oh, and last but not least, you can submit a island that will be included, and DM's Lair submitted an island for us, Luke, one of you guys.
Yeah,
submitted one.
Zach Chaney, he's Goliath Claire. He submitted an island.
He submitted an island.
He's like our top writer, right alongside me. So it's going to be good stuff.
Yeah, I think I gave it to you, Mark, to look at. He submitted one.
I'm not sure
Oh,
if
okay, I'll
you
send it
did,
to you.
but that's fine.
Yeah,
Like,
we got a lot.
so if you pledge at all, you can submit an island idea, and we'll take the top ones, and I will write the island that you pitched into the book, and you will be credited for that island. So I think that's like the big special thing about our Kickstarter.
This is only going to be available cloth map and special editions, which will only be available on the Kickstarter and nowhere else. And then we're going to put it out right away. And then we got another one coming out after that, the Year of Legends, which will be our 12 new ancestries. That's coming out. That's coming out pretty soon too. That's coming out in a few months. But we are also here because someone has a Kickstarter coming out tomorrow. Luke,
I do.
Is that you?
Yeah, it is. Hold on. Yeah, it's me. Yeah. We have The Secret Art of Game Mastery coming out tomorrow. Basically what we did is we started writing this thing over a year ago, and our goal was to take all of the knowledge and expertise that my team and I have over all of our decades of gaming and as game masters, right? And put it into one book. So the idea is that somebody can grab this book if they're a new game master or even a veteran game master, and they can get a lot of the information, advice, and guidance that my team and I have to help them game master, right? Because we all know that game mastering isn't always easy, and there isn't always a wealth of information out there, right? You might get the Dungeon Master Guide or core rulebook or something, but like maybe not everything you need is in there. And so what we're trying to do is give people that practical advice, the things that you can actually implement at your game table. It's not this heady information where you're like, what do I do with this? But it's like, this is how you do it. You got a problem player, these are your steps. You need to design an adventure, these are your steps. Players are ignoring your plot hooks. Okay, these are the 3 things that you need to have in every plot hook so that you have a great probability of your players going and doing the thing that you spent hours preparing for them, right? And so we tried to put this all into one book for folks. And also, so that's the main book, The Secret Art of Game Mastery, but we also have 2 companion books, The Secret Art of Note-Taking and The Secret Art of Preparation. Secret of Preparation is basically how do you design and create a campaign and adventures to go in that campaign. And it uses a lot of the same templates that I use in my own games, tweaked and made publishable because my templates are just kind of like, woo, but we made it really awesome to help people create, design their campaigns and their adventures. And then The Secret Art of Note-Taking is the 3rd book. That one right there is basically a journal that you keep as you're running your game. And it helps you keep track of things that are going on. And I do this exact same thing for all of my games. And again, same templates that I use are in this thing to help me keep track of my games and run my games. And especially there's a template for future plot points is a huge thing that I do that helps me take things that the players did or decisions they made, keep track of it, and then circle it back into the campaign at some point. And they're just like, oh no, that's happening because we did a thing. And it makes it more personable and like, they like it. They love that crap, So anyway, 3 books, information, templates, and stuff. The whole idea is to help game masters run their games because that's like what we do on our channel.
Give me the link or post the link.
Yes, I'm going to find that right now, and I'm going to throw it into the chat, and I'll Discord it to you as well, so you have it.
Okay, yeah, we'll put it in. Don't forget, do like, subscribe. I'm actually expanding the channel. Mark doesn't even know this, but
I don't know that.
I am going to try to put together 5 and 10 minute videos. I'm not good at editing, but I'm good at talking, and I realized a lot of other YouTubers literally just sit here and talk to the camera for 5 minutes and post it. I was like, wait, I can do that. I
can do that for you too.
You can do that too. We can both do that.
I don't have to worry about editing. We could do a 5-minute topic.
Yeah, 5-minute.
There's a lot of things that we have to say. Like I feel like some of our biggest scoops are ultimately like could be condensed into 10 minutes. Like some of the things, some of the exclusives information that you have, for example, in this stream could be condensed down. You would lose a lot from not having the conversation, but for some people, they don't have as much time. So I think that makes sense. Speaking of which, also, like you said, to like and subscribe, also there's super chats, and we have had one that's on the topic that we should probably save for like right as we're going into the topic. There's another one that's not on the topic, so I wanted to do that one now, just so it doesn't derail the main topic when we go into that.
Yes.
From Noskevian, asking if we have ever played Chronicles of Darkness or World of Darkness games.
Yes. Next question. Now, I have played World of Darkness. I used to do Vampire the Masquerade. I was Venture. I used to do the LARPing. I played it a little. We actually talked about that because Jessica Radikoff was at Gen Con, and that's what she did all weekend. And she won. She became the queen of the city or whatever. I was like,
Oh, wow.
I'm like, you won a LARP? She's like, I won. I like killed the other one and became the queen. I was like, I guess you won.
Oh wow, the Shadow Court took over. That's not good for some changelings. They're the bad guys. I know that Jess's character is Shadow Court Puka in the thing that she was doing.
So it's really funny. I was like talking to her yesterday. I was like, okay, I didn't know you could win, but yeah. So I have played. I haven't done it in a long time, but that was really big. Like when that came out, it was really big. And I actually just got. There's a new board game, a legacy board game called Vampire. What it's called, Chronicles? Yeah, Vampire Chronicles, it's like a role-playing board game legacy game that I'm going to try out, and I just got that. It's one of those I backed 4 years ago, and it showed up, and I didn't even know what it was. I was like, what is this? I'm like, where did this come from? I thought someone sent it to me for free. I had to look it up to find out I backed it. I was like, oh, yeah.
I have a game that I backed on Kickstarter. It's some sort of like naval or space combat game with minis, do space combat. It looked pretty cool. I backed it. I think that was 3 years ago. I get updates and they're still working on it, I guess. But I don't know. When I get it, I'll need to play it.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the same boat. But I can tell you, yeah, look, our Jewel, the book is done. You saw it.
I saw it at the puzzle
Luke
booth.
has one.
I'm hoping to get mine.
Oh yeah, I need to send you yours. Wait, Luke has one.
Yeah, I need to tell you the things that I haven't gotten yet because you told me.
I know. I just give me the list.
I forgot to
look.
send you
Luke
the
has
list.
it.
Yeah,
it's real.
Awesome.
I got the Pathfinder version. I might run it someday. See.
Yeah, it's.
I have also run some World of Darkness stuff. Like I actually still have theoretically, although it's been a few months since we played it, a Changeling 20 game that also has some mages in it that I was running with Linda. So, but I didn't play it until like fairly recently with the 20th anniversary.
What about you, Luke?
Edition.
Did you ever play World of Darkness?
No, I haven't, but I heard about it. It's like the one with vampires and werewolves, right? The werewolves are actually stronger than the vampires. Somebody was talking about that whole thing.
Yeah,
they get a lot of extra attacks,
so
they can in physical combat they are gonna be able to probably win against a vampire, but vampires have some cheesy stuff that they can do.
So anyhow, our Kickstarter, the one from 2 years ago, it's finishing up this month. It's all going out. So, and we're working on the Foundry module. We're working on part 3 right now, and we're going. It's quick now. We're getting better at it. It's like I was our first one, and our second one is half done, and that one's also moving along. And now our new Kickstarters, we pretty much try to have it nearly done or done when we do our Kickstarter, so you're not going to be waiting.
Yeah, we want to have a lot of it done, but we still obviously we need your help on the Kickstarter to get some of the last things through and to help us with some of the costs of the product. But we want to get a lot of the writing and the art planned out in advance so that it's going to get to you quickly.
So we have a super chat, and this can go in for a while, so I'm going to give the 10-second answer, and then we'll go into the 10-minute answer, which is Dr. Watts says, what's the big deal? The artist used an AI tool to improve their art. How is this different than a writer using a spell checker? The difference is that a spell checker or even a grammar checker is a yes or no. Like you either spelled the word right or you didn't spell the word right. AI is nothing more than advanced autofill. That's what I call AI, because that's all it is at this point. And it's advanced autofill. The problem is it uses autofill from other artists, and it literally can copy other artists' art to then autofill your art. So you can literally be stealing, or the AI could be stealing something it scrapes off the internet and then puts their art into your art. And it's actually, and you're like, well, that can't be that. It's like, you can't really do that. Actually, you can. If you are good enough with AI and you ask for AI art to not only improve it in a specific way, but then have it in the style of a specific artist, it will do that. And that's the problem is that it's not the equivalent of using a filter or using a brightness or saturation filter. It is actually taking other people's artwork, scraping it, and recreating it without their permission. And that's the problem.
For someone who's less good at visually analyzing things like me, I want to explain what Stephen just said in an analogy using the sort of the writing AIs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one time I saw a really, really perfect example of why the writing AIs really are just taking someone else's work and paraphrasing it. That was pretty much indisputable. And it's actually an example that's near and dear to our show because it's about gaming. Somebody asked ChatGPT to convert a Displacer Beast from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition into Pathfinder 2nd edition. Okay. And the result that they got was actually a pretty decent Displacer Beast stat block. It made some kind of weird decisions that were kind of creature abilities that made sense in Pathfinder, but that never have been in any Wizard's Displacer Beast in the past. And it was but a cat-like monster could have some of these things, maybe if you squint at it. So when I saw that, I got curious because I was wondering, why would an AI possibly make these design decisions that it made? And so I actually Googled and found that there was a Reddit post that made these decisions like giving the tentacles a special kind of grab and a pounce ability and a few other things that they weren't outrageous and they could make sense to do, but put together, there's no way you would select that when converting from 5th edition because D&D has never given those to Displacer Beasts. So, and it became very clear to me when going through that particular Reddit post was just being, the wording was paraphrased, so it wasn't using the exact same words, but it was like the equivalent of a student who goes online to write their paper by just taking Wikipedia and changing the wording slightly so it's not literally the same wording from Wikipedia.
So basically, right now, AI art is not AI art. It is, again, what I call advanced autofill. And it is using other artists to autofill the content, which that's the issue with it. Now, eventually, say 10, 15 years from now, when AI art was actually going to create original pieces that are not based on existing artwork in some way, then it will truly be AI art. But whenever this comes up, I tell you to tell this to your friends, say, no, advanced autofill, that's all it is. It's really all it is at this stage of the game. It's not AI. It does no intelligence whatsoever. It is just using mathematical equations to scan and find other pieces. Well, it does. It does a little bit of AI.
I'm going to quibble only with your... I agree with most of what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
Quibble on saying it's not AI as someone who...
Well, true AI.
Before I worked in gaming, I was researching AI. Okay?
Okay.
And the problem is that everybody always says that anything that AI creates is not AI because it's not whatever they think is AI. So, for example, Google Maps, finding your route, that was created using certain techniques that would be considered, at least in the academic field of research, to have arisen from AI. But now that it works, a lot of other fields of computer science are well, no, that's not AI though.
Right.
Because AI is something that is not so easy to define, and I would definitely not say that it isn't AI.
I'm talking about art AI
said,
right now.
That means it's not a sentient, sapient creature that has generated these things all on its own. And I think that's what you mean when you say that it's not classic AI.
Correct.
The robot from futuristic TV shows.
Right, like classic AI, and that's the thing. People think AI as the sentient being that you say something and then it figures it out using whatever, its brain. But
Right.
really, AI at this point is data sets that it mines incredibly efficiently and then uses those data sets to come up with results. AI works really, really well with things like maps. It actually works really well in the medical field right now because it's pattern recognition, and it's fantastic at pattern recognition, finding things like cancer or, you know, issues with, you know, some of your cells like that. It's really good at. It's really good at spell checking or even some grammar checking because there's a lot of patterns in that. So anything with pattern recognition, AI is really good at. This is the very first step where it's using pattern recognition with graphical interface. And that's why I say it's advanced autofill, because it kind of is. And if you look at the telltale signs of AI art, for those who don't know, you look at the hands. It's very bad at hands. Things always have 4 or 6 fingers. You look at the feet. They're very bad at feet. And then they always have what's called, I call them the wisps to nowhere. There's all this wispy stuff on it. And it's like these wisps and sometimes just like little fragments of art. And again, the AI just does this wisping because it doesn't know how to always end the art. So it sort of fades it. It's a crux. Otherwise, it would be a hard edge. So it does these wisps. And in the art, you can see it now that I kind of pointed out. Like, look at the fingers. Also, patterns. Like, look for anything with like runes or writing. That always gets messed up. They're bad at that. So that's how you can tell AI art. The thing is that there's some really good AI art out there. There's a lot of news organizations now, like Boing Boing uses AI art like crazy. But their AI art is excellent because they really know what they're doing, and it just looks, I mean, it definitely looks like AI art, but there's none of those telltale signs that it, you know, it's like that that's actually AI art. But what was surprising about this is the AI art not only was so obviously AI art, but it was just bad art. On top of that, it was like, wow, it's like they didn't even bother to, like, if you're going to use AI, at least use it in such a way that it improved the quality of the figures. It just made them look kind of fakey. I mean,
we're talking about the giant in question.
Yeah,
correct?
sorry. So
the giant from Bigby.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. You know, what's interesting is, so like I was, when I first, it was like a couple days ago that I started seeing tweets about this, and I started looking at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, let me see if I could recognize without, there was one tweet that had arrows at it and stuff, but I didn't see that first.
Yeah.
At first, all I saw was the image, and I was like, all right, let me see if I can find what I think categorizes it as AI art. And the first thing that jumped out to me was the horn. One of the horns was like awkwardly angled. And I don't know, that wasn't one of the things other people were pointing out, but to me, that was really weird. And there was like a horn on its chest above one of its shoulders that looked weird too. And then I kept on looking. The hands, I didn't see anything about the hands, but that foot, that one foot was like all like, my foot is broken angle. And I was like, well, that looks clear. And then with the one image that showed all the pointy stuff, there were a couple things I didn't notice. But yeah, the interesting thing is, I think somebody in the comments said this too, you know, or whatever. It's like they use AI art to refine it, right? But it still looked a little messed up.
It was messed up. And so here's the story. And I'm going to tell you. All right, I didn't have time to totally prepare, but so I'm in charge of. I do all the art direction for all the Battle Zoo books. And I'm trained as an artist and a content developer, layout artist. And I taught AI art. No, I taught interactive design to 3D animation at Carnegie Mellon, NYU, and the New School. So I am trained. I have a degree in design. So, and I was thinking it would be good for me to explain the process, because why is this such a big deal? Which I see some people in the chat saying, okay, they used AI art. Why? What's the big deal? And you're kind of right. But more importantly, how did it get to this point? So supposedly, and so I had lunch with Linda Codega when the story broke 2 days ago. And they showed me their laptop, and actually they had all the original art from the artists, and they were showing it to me. And one of the things that I saw right away is that the art didn't have layers. So one of the things I always ask for my artists, I ask for a couple of things. First thing is I always ask for a sketch, usually a rough sketch. And one of my artists will usually send me, one of my better artists will send me 4 sketches. And then I'll choose of those 4 which one I like. And then from those 4 sketches, or 3, usually a lot of people do 3. This guy does 4. I will then ask for another sketch, and they do a more detailed sketch. From there, if I need something real specific, something very complex, I'll ask for a line art sketch. A line art sketch is then they draw the whole thing just in black and white with detail, with real detail. And I've been previewing some of the art from Year of Legends in our newsletters, and you can see that's the line art. And then they do color. They'll usually do what's called base color. So they'll give it to me with base color, and then they'll make sure the coloring is right, and then they'll do final color. And then sometimes they even do like another round after that. The thing is, I always ask for them to give it to me in layers, and they give it to me in Photoshop. The reason I want it in layers is that sometimes, especially if you have like a cover, like our cover has like 50 layers, is that each character is a different layer, because sometimes I might need to move them a little so they can fit the logo. For the type and the for the authors, I need to make sure the authors fit, and I don't want to like over someone, so I might move them up and down a little. So you always want things layered. So as the art director for a BattleZoo line of products, I know for a fact if they're using AI art, because I need to see multiple versions, and then the final file I'm going to get is going to have multiple layers. AI art is not in multiple layers. It's one layer. That's it. You just have one layer. So I will know right away if they give it to me on my end. So that's weird. Like, why did the art director at WoTC not know about this? Or maybe they just don't ask for their art in multiple layers. It's possible. It makes your life a lot harder, but I always ask for things in layers whenever possible. It makes my life a lot easier, so why wouldn't I do that? The other thing is that I know the process at WoTC. So right now, they are doing final layout and revisions for the Vecna book right now, and I believe the Vecna book comes out. Do you want to look that up real quick, Mark? Their new Vecna book.
I can look up the Vecna book.
So the way it works is that the book is in layout and it's in InDesign. They lay out the book with everything, and then what they do is they have an all hands meeting, and they actually have the book printed out. And again, I know this because I spoke to some people at WoTC.
It says 2020. They're starting 2024 with it, but I'm not finding the exact month.
Okay, I think it comes out. It's about a year from now. I know it's about a year from now. They're doing the layout now, and what they'll do later is once the layout is done, they're going to print out galleys, and galleys is a printout of the entire book. And everyone who worked on the book goes into the office. You can't do this from home. You actually have to go into the office, and you actually have to read the books and go through the galleys, and then use a pen, an actual pen, and mark off things that are either incorrect or something to be fixed. And this could be as simple as text is, going into something it shouldn't be, or a line is too long, or you forgot a comma, or you forgot a word, and then they go in and they edit it. And everyone does this, including the top people at WoTC. This goes through a lot of eyes. So
that's similar to the Paizo approval process.
Yeah, so what's the Paizo method?
Back when the office was around. The approval process for Paizo was, which obviously has changed now, so that you do it on electronic copies now that things are mostly remote, pretty much entirely remote. But it used to be that you'd go into the office and there were printouts of every, just like you said, and you take a pen or a Post-it notes or what have you, and you mark down all of your notes. And in general, it wouldn't be literally everybody at the company, but it would be the project lead from the department that worked on that project, plus the edit lead and the art lead and the publisher and a lot of like the highest ranking folks from each department that that touched that project would all go through and look through and make notes and make comments. And then during that approvals process, changes could happen. In fact, sometimes if you wonder how did a certain thing get past the approvals process, the answer is it may have been added by mistake in the approvals process due to fixing another change. And then if it was late in the approvals process, then nobody else saw it after that. Like there's a few famous typos that I know for a fact were added late in the approvals process by accident. But you can't have a piece of art like that added late in the approvals process. It would have had to be in there.
That's impossible.
Before everybody looked at it.
Yeah. The point is, and when I meant everyone, sorry, I often will do that. Everyone who was associated with that book looks at it. It's not like the entire WoTC team looks at it, but like all the authors, all the leads, all the top people, everyone on the team. So, we'll go through a good 10, 20 eyes, and they'll supposedly look at every page. And as you said, sometimes changes can lead to other mistakes being made, but that's mostly text, because once the graphics are in, the graphics are in. Those are not things that are going to be coming along later. Those are
very difficult to alter the graphics. Paizo, when I started, used to have basically no recourse if something happened that late in the process, even if it was close. Yeah. Fortunately, Paizo got an art director, Kent Hamilton, who's also just a really good artist, who had also done a lot of art for Paizo in the past, who became able to make a limited number of in-house tweaks if necessary to art, and also do amazing concept art, like some of the concept art people have probably seen for some of the new things in Pathfinder 2nd edition. And so Paizo at least is capable of making calling some last minute audibles if necessary on the art.
And then what happens after that, then the book is sent to the printer, and then the printer will send me outputs, galleys of every single page. And these are the actual signatures. I don't have one around here, but there's signatures of the pages. And what I will often do, the most common thing I will do is I light in the art. It often will, it's hard. It's something that it prints about 10 to 20% darker on paper than it will on your screen. And if that's where the art director really, can shine, is that they know, like, I can look at things usually and tell, and I will try to do it ahead of time. But then when I get the pages, if I see something that's a little dark and you're losing detail, I will actually then lighten it and then send it back, and then they'll replace it. That I don't get another hard copy on. They send me PDF copy and then I approve it. But the point is, this goes through a lot of eyes, and it's not that they're just looking at this online. It's actually going through eyes on pieces of paper, through multiple people, through multiple stages. So, what does that mean? That means they knew this was in there. And for whatever reason, either this is something they were okay with, or they passed the buck and they thought someone else would take care of it, or no one cared enough to say anything. And keep in mind, they were probably editing this book and doing this about a year ago. And that was before this whole AI art, kerfuffle sort of has been exploding recently in the TTRPG world. So, but that also shows that you got to kind of be a little bit forward thinking, especially if you're working on projects a year, 2 years ahead of time, that if you're going to be doing something experimental, like using AI art, maybe you have to talk about it and have meetings. Maybe they thought it was good for their... Actually, I was talking to someone yesterday. They said maybe they actually think it's a good thing, because then in their stock, in their shareholder meetings, they're going to say something like, "We use AI art to cut down costs," and I guarantee the market's going to like that. They're going to like, good. Use AI, cut down those costs, make it so you can make more profit. You know, that's something that's a big buzzword right now is AI this, AI that. And I have a feeling I'm very curious to see their next. I mean, I don't think they're going to do it now because they had to like walk back those statements, but I have a feeling this was something they actually wanted to do because
I don't know if I agree with that. I think you were right with a lot of the things that
Mhm.
you were starting with there, but
Mhm.
I actually do think that they knew by then, even by a year ago when they would have been working on this, they knew that people would not want AI to be in there. And I
Mhm.
think that all things being equal and it not costing them money to replace it or what
Mhm.
have you, I think they would have wanted to not have it in there.
Yeah.
So I think what most likely happened is either literally all of those people who did that long approvals process actually did miss it, possibly because honestly, when you're doing that approvals process, you are when you're in this industry, you're slammed for time. You have to get through every page. And if someone is as bad as I am at detecting AI art, which admittedly, when people pointed it out there, I did see that it was clearly AI art, but I could have missed it because
Mhm.
I'm bad at determining that.
Mhm.
So if some number of people are bad enough at determining that, they probably wouldn't have caught it. And then you get unlucky. It's possible no one did, or someone did, and then whoever was they talked to, they would be like, hey, I think this was AI, wasn't it? And then they talk to someone who's like, well, no, I know this person, it's a real like we hired a human to do it. And they might have been like, well, but it looks like there's some parts that they might have done with AI, maybe. And if this conversation even happened, maybe someone said, well, it's too late now. Because I've definitely been in situations that weren't about ethics or AI, but were just more about like, oh, this art piece doesn't exactly look like what we said the character looks like in some way. And the answer is often it's too late now because it's a lot of work to update it. So someone may have made the call that the price and just delay of changing it was more of a problem to them than if it did get caught, than the uproar that would eventually happen out of it being found there. But given that once it got caught and revealed and people were complaining about it, they pretty quickly issued a statement like denouncing and saying they weren't going to use it. I don't think they would have been able to issue a PR statement that directly, that quickly, without having more days to discuss it among the
Mhm.
staff. If as you said, Stephen, that they actually did have a plan that they wanted to use
Mhm.
it, I think it would have taken longer for them to get that statement out if they weren't pretty
Yeah.
sure that they didn't
I'm
want.
I kind of agree with the thought that it could have easily gotten missed in the approval process because they've got how many projects in flight with hard deadlines and all this stuff going on. So I can easily see people reviewing things and missing it. You know what I mean? Just kind of
Mhm.
going through and going through it. And it depends. Like when for instance, when my team is reviewing stuff, like maybe we're checking for different things. Like I'm checking for these things. Other person checks for these things. Like one person's watching the tree for snipers, one person's watching for trip lines, the other people are watching to the sides of the trail as your unit goes through the forest or whatever. So like it could have gotten missed, right? And you're really hurried and rushed, so it could have gotten missed. But I also think that there's something to say too about that last point, Mark, because when when a problem comes up, there's always the risk analysis. Like what's the chances of this getting found out? And what's the cost to us, and what's the cost of us changing this? So let's pretend that they're about to print it, and they're like, oh my gosh, somebody found it, raised the flag, and they're just like, geez, if we have to go back to layout on this and all this, that's going to set us behind by 3 or 4, 6 months or whatever it is. And the cost of that is like $1 million. Somebody at that point high up is going to say, you know what? Risk is like the risk of the known cost of $1 million or whatever. We're going to take the risk that we're going to push it through. Maybe nobody will notice it. We're going to take that risk. Somebody made that decision potentially, right? Is what I'm saying. Because those are the decisions you make in corporate. And then imagine if it was already printed and then somebody caught it. Are you going to pulp however many copies of books that is, and then just
Definitely not.
yeah. So
Like,
I think
even I who would say it would be outrageous for them to destroy the book over having that. Like, there's no way they can do that. They can try to fix it moving on, but they can't destroy it once it's already printed.
And so at that point, what do you do? Let's pretend it's already printed, or you can't turn back the clock. It's going to go out, right? What do you do? Do you tell people, hey guys, we know that there's AI art in this. We apologize. We caught it last minute. We've already printed the books, etc. We're still going to send them out because we don't want to pulp like 1,000 million trees or something, Or do you tell people, or do you just not tell people, right? Like the company that I worked at does the exact same like risk analysis thing. Like they are like a financial, they are, and used to work for them, a financial services company. So they have to report things to like the SEC and stuff like that. But one of the things they think about is, okay, do we report this thing or do we just fix it in a couple of days and then not say anything? You know what I mean? It just depends, and they'll just make that call. Sometimes they report it like they're legally obligated to. Sometimes they don't, because they know they're not going to get caught, and they can fix it in 2 days with a patch or a data update or something. So like those are the decisions companies make, and sometimes they get caught, and a lot of times they don't.
So here's the thing: there's a couple of fascinating aspects to this that I don't think anyone realizes, that AI art is not copyrightable. And there's one thing that WoTC is very, very, very protective of, and that is their content, their lore, their images, everything. Like they make sure that everything they do is theirs and it's copyrightable and no one else can use it. So that alone probably made it that they didn't want anything to do with AI art, because they're like, wait a second, we can't copyright this. We don't own this anymore. We are not using AI art anymore not because it was cheaper, not because we like the way it looks, but if we can't copyright it and can't protect it, there is no reason for them to do it, because they are very much about protecting their brand. That is like their number one goal at all times. So the thing is, someone asked, actually, can you force someone to prove it's done through AI art? Actually, someone did something interesting. So someone ran this art through an AI art detector, and it failed horribly. It basically came out as human, 100% human, or 95% human each time. It's not because the artists themselves confirmed that they used AI art. It's that they drew it and then used the AI art in aspects of it. Now, this is where it gets really weird, is because artists use autofill and filters constantly. I mean, so where's the line between using a Photoshop filter or using some Photoshop AI functionality like autofill or autocomplete? There's something that a lot of people use, is that you can use auto aware in Photoshop. Like you can draw half of a rock and you can tell Photoshop to draw the other half of the rock, and it will do it. And it looks great. Most times it looks really good. It's actually Photoshop, not AI, but Photoshop itself has built-in tools and they're really good at like doing things like landscapes or beaches or forests, like anything with kind of repetition in it. And it's surprisingly good at it. And it's nearly impossible for anyone to tell when that's done, because it's done so well. So maybe the artist was using AI as a new tool set and was just fooling around with it and really didn't mean any harm whatsoever, because they do this all the time. And maybe that was all they were doing, because they publicly said in their profile that they used AI art.
That's true.
Yeah. So I don't think this was done maliciously. In fact, I
don't think it was done like secretly under the table of like a we'll save costs by secretly doing AI. I think that WoTC hired this artist for a while before they ever used AI tools. Then the artist used AI tools and did not tell WoTC they were doing that. And somehow either no one caught it, or if they did, someone said, it's too expensive to fix it, just leave it in, right?
Yeah.
So someone in the chat says that they actually worked at Wizards warehouse, and that they do sometimes pulp massive amounts of books and cards. So
they pulp a ton. They pulp a ton of Magic cards. Amazon itself pulps something like $200 million worth of products a day. It's something insane. It's like $200-300 million dollars a day, every day they throw out and destroy. They don't pulp it, they destroy, and that's everything. So, because if you keep
I'm
something in
never
their
gonna
warehouse
pulp
for
my
more than
books.
what's that?
I will give my books away for free to people that want to use the content before I pulp the things.
Well, Amazon, if you keep it in their warehouse for more than like 6 to 9 months or something and don't pay for it, they'll throw it out. And so they destroy. If you knew how much they destroyed, people would be rioting in the streets. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars a year worth of products of everything, everything they sell. They throw out a lot of it. So in the end, the thing is, did they use AI art? Yeah. What, did they admit they were using AI art? Yeah. Everyone seems to know that. The thing is that I don't even think WoTC knew or understood the ramifications, and I'm not even bashing on WoTC. I mean, I think, look, I
don't think you're bashing on them.
No.
You're invoking Hanlon's razor, right? Which is never attributed to malice. What could instead be attributed to, like, in this situation, like incompetence or messing up or doing it by accident.
I think they just didn't understand it, and they were trying something new, and obviously bad timing because it happened right during Gen Con, and people are against it. And the big thing is, you know who's against it the most is the artists, because all my artists, like, it's taking money away from them. And not only is it taking money away from them, but that's stealing their art. And a lot of artists now are scared to put up their art on websites because it's going to get scraped, and then their art's going to end up in the AI art database. And then next thing you know, their art is being used. I heard a podcast recently about this. I forgot which one it was. I listened to a ton of podcasts, and they were saying that someone was really excited because they got some of their art, and the artist was like, okay, cool, I'll be happy to sign it. And they showed it to them, and it wasn't theirs. It was done by AI, but it was in their style. And it was and they were horrified because they're like, wow, not only is this not mine, not only does this person thought it was mine, but it was done by AI, and it's such a good, and it was done so well that it looks exactly like my style of art. Yeah. And then that was one of the artists out there who's like leading the movement of against AI art, because it was literally stealing. It wasn't even stealing their art, it was stealing their style, which is even worse, because it's like, now what? It's like, I'm known for one specific style, and if a computer can mimic it perfectly, now what?
on the topic of not attributing to malice, what might be attributed to incompetence or whatever else, like, I get that, because I would say up until a month ago, I wasn't even aware of, I knew AI art existed, but I wasn't aware of like the details around why it could be problematic and what the issues are with it. And even now I'm still learning. I live under a rock. I'm just working so much. I don't keep up on things, and so I'm still learning about that crap. So it's possible, that they just were incompetent or didn't think about it or something, and it just got through. And then they're now obviously very cognizant of that it's a bad thing, right? Do this at great risk, so.
We had a super chat. Blanco. My theory is that WoTC is using custom AI tools based on their art library to avoid legal issues regarding the dinosaurs, not the giants, two separate issues. There was a couple of things. There was like some dinosaurs. There was a couple of things that were using AI art or aspects of AI art. See, this isn't true. So I wouldn't even call true AI art. Like, true AI art is you go into an AI art generator and you just say, literally, draw me a giant with big horns holding a axe covered with snow in a mountain, and it'll do it for you. As opposed to, I have a piece of art, I then add it into the AI generator and say, add a blizzard around this, add the blizzard around this giant. But then it gets weird, because I'm like, okay, well, you could do that in Photoshop too. So is it AI? Is it autofill? Is it a filter? Like, what is it? And the answer is yes. Unfortunately, it's all of those things. We're at this weird juncture when I think digital artists were okay using Photoshop when it was just filters and autofill and autocomplete using abstract mathematical formulas, as opposed to this AI art, which specifically scrapes the internet looking for artists to render from and then use those as reference points because of the style. So it's hard to say there's a very fuzzy line here. And I see the chat's like blowing up on this. It's like, Is Photoshop AI? Yeah, in some ways it is. Photoshop does do a lot of AI generation. A lot of the filters use AI. And I'm not talking about you can buy filters. I'm talking about the ones built into Photoshop. I'm talking about core Photoshop. Is that AI? Yeah, they have AI. Is it AI in the sense that, oh, I'm scanning a famous artist and copying their style? But there's filters that will turn your art into watercolor or oil-based paints. Is that AI art because now I'm looking like a Van Gogh or some other famous artist that worked in that style? It's so hard to say. It's very hard to say. I see a lot of people saying about scraping. Yeah, so basically the art of scraping is what this actually is interesting. We're going to start hearing this term, I think, a lot more in the next year or two. You're going to start hearing the word scraping a lot. So scraping is where where a data set tool will scrape the internet. They literally go through the internet looking for data to collect. They literally scrape it. And then they take that data, they put it into their database, and then they use it in some method. And some think of be as a lot of scrapers will do it like like a news aggregate. So a news aggregate web page. So imagine you have a web page that shows you all the news on Baldur's Gate 3. So what it does is it literally scrapes the internet looking for news on Baldur's Gate 3, collects it, puts it in one location, and then you can see it. And that's a big issue, because Google does that. Google scrapes news and then presents it as Google News, even though it's not there. They'll present the source, but a law just went into effect in Canada where you can't do that anymore. You can't scrape other websites because you're going to Google and not going to their website to read the news. So you're going to start hearing that term, I think, a lot. Scraping at crawlers too. Google is a scraper. Everyone started to chime in, but with text, it was very black and white because text is text. It's like if you're scraping it, you're probably copying it exactly. And if you're listing the source, okay, well, is it scraping because I'm listening to source and linking back to them? Kind of. But then you have something like AI art. It's like, okay, I'm scraping 10 million images, and this AI art is a combination of a million images from different artists. You can't give the credit for all million artists, so there it's going to get weird. And actually the big fight going on right now with Hollywood and the strike has to do with likeness rights. Someone actually mentioned that can you digitally take someone's likeness and then put them in a movie forever and then not pay them? So imagine what they were looking to do is that they would scan you, pay you for one day's work, own your likeness forever, then you become a huge movie star, and then they say, oh, you know what, I'm going to take this actor and make a movie with their likeness because I own their likeness, put it out and not pay them a penny. So this is where we're getting to this point in our society through AI art, through digital art, through it's going to start happening with music soon. It's going to start happening with television and movies. It already has, and that's what the strike is about. We're getting to the next layer, which is text is one thing, but because text, if someone copied it, they can just rewrite it and then get around that. It's like, well, it's similar, but not exactly the same. But if you have AI art that looks exactly like Monet and their style, well, then that's a Monet. Or if you're using AI art that looks exactly like, I don't know, I'm watching Star Trek right now, like William Shatner, it's like, that's William Shatner. It's like, it's no, or Elvis Presley or Mark Seifter, it's like, that's what they look like. What they look like, and you're stealing their likeness, and you should be compensating them. So it's getting really crazy. What's your process, Luke? We talked about our process and how WoTC does it in Paizo. What's your process? Because you're putting out 3 books. How did you go through everything?
For the artwork?
Yeah, from the artwork and layout, just in general.
We'll give I don't know what you want to call them, an art. It's a paragraph telling them what we want in the artwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we usually get a draft. There's always a draft. It's not always necessarily a sketch. Some of these guys, their draft has got color and stuff in it, They'll just give us a draft of something and we'll be like, yeah, we like it, or make some changes, and they give us the final. We always ask for the Photoshop, but They don't usually have layers. Mostly the Photoshop is just a big, huge file so that we can produce it at like whatever resolution and size we need it at, you know. There is one artist that I've worked with that does something very similar to what you were saying, Stephen. It might be the exact same guy too. He gives us 4 options. We pick the one we like, and then he gives us like a good sketch of it, and we're like, that's good. And then he colors it. And then that's usually the final, you know. So we got like 3 steps in the process, you know, and he's very fast too and pretty good at it. We've only had to ask for corrections a couple of times on stuff, but most of the artists they aren't as elaborate as that process. But I think by looking at some of your books, you work with a lot more established high profile artists. So our budget is not that great. So we work with artists they're good artists, but they're not some of them are, but most of them are just like, oh, I found this guy, he's amazing. Okay, cool, let's do art. You know what I mean? Sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's the process still same. My point is that I do ask for I ask for layers only because I also sometimes animate, like that animation before this, before we did the stream. Like to do an animation of a flat artwork, you need the layers, or it makes it a lot easier for the animator. So if they want to animate something, again, I do it a lot. You and I were talking at Gen Con because you like the borders on my books.
Yes.
And to do borders, that has to be layered because you always have to move the top and the sides a little. And even where the page number is, that's a separate layer because sometimes I have to move the page number. Sometimes it's in the corner. Sometimes it's in the middle of the page. Like, I need everything layered so that I can adjust it as needed. Because you also need bleed for the print, which you don't need for the PDF. So I prefer layers whenever possible. The point I was making with that is that if I get something that's flat, I get nervous because then I'm like, because you can if you get something that's one layer, that could be, in theory, stolen or AI or someone else did it. I like layers. I'm not saying any artists do that.
Yeah.
But that's what you would get.
Yeah, when we commission pieces, we almost never do one-offs. We commission them in batches.
Of course.
We're going to get 5 or 10 or something.
Yeah.
And I know their style. I know their exact style, and it's always the same. And I feel like if it was constantly a different type of style, then it would be a little bit more obvious. Like, what's going on here? I would expect the same thing from an artist. And so I don't know how well, like maybe AI can always do a consistent style. I don't know. But I think that would be kind of a giveaway, you know, and
So I'm going to let you take a break because I know that Luke likes to take breaks to go to the bathroom. So we're going to
play my barbarian video over the break.
Yes.
Yay, that's amazing.
I'm going to play you being you. And if you give me your ad, I'll put your ad in these too for your book when it comes out. So
I have to
later, not right now. So are you ready? Are you ready to do break? Break!
Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
Oh, he almost made it, but I see the cat. I like the cat. They can put the headphones on the cat. Have the cat do the the show.
You want to do the show, Squeaky?
Does not like that. It's like, well, what are you doing?
He said no.
Do not put headphones on me.
He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Ah.
So what do you guys? I see a lot of people have a lot of. Steven calls for break. Steven also immediately put one of the panelists to work. Well, that was a recording, but that is funny. It's funny that we have you on who did it. The
recording, dude. I was live. I just swapped.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
it's amazing all that editing too.
Good.
I mean, what is your? There is no right or wrong, good or bad. It looks like they're not going to do this in the future. That it was probably an honest mistake, or it was something that they were testing out, which is, could also be. I mean, like, for example, like I have in one of my books, one of my key artists, I asked him to draw tiles. These are like tiles in one of the rooms, and they're tiles with, they're like, tiles like brick tiles with various pieces of artwork on them. And he tried out using a 3D program to do the tiles with, his art on top of it. So that was just something he wanted to try out with, and it was a good use case for him, and I was fine with that. But would Daryl suddenly be like, "Oh, he used 3D art instead of hand drawn art"? I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I think that was okay. I think it was okay to use a 3D render to make the tiles look realistic because he had the tiles stacking on top of each other, and it was just a lot easier for him to get the dimensions correct using a 3D render, and then he drew on top of it. So it was a combination. So is that okay? Is it okay to have someone even use their own art and then add add AI to it and then draw over the AI? Is that okay? It's very tricky. This whole topic of like what is considered okay, and I believe what's going to be considered okay is what the market says it's going to be okay. And if the market doesn't like it, then they're going to complain, and then they're not going to buy their products. I think that's kind of it.
The market always determines where things go.
Yeah, you're fading a little, by the way. I'm
fading?
Yes.
Why am I fading?
Oh, now you're talking, because I think you were talking quietly, and it was like,
oh yeah, flipping. I mean, the market always determines where things go.
Yeah.
If the market is the people, the consumer, collectively, right? Mm-hmm. And if people refuse to buy it, right, then they'll stop doing that. If people are, even if 10% of people are like no and they won't buy it, but 90% are like whatever, I don't care, then the 90% will win. Right, that market will be okay with that, because especially for something like this, you know what I mean? Like they could, I don't know what the math is, right? But the executives in the boardroom will be like, well, if we lose 10% of purchasers, but we save all of this money because we're no longer paying artists, like numbers make a lot of these decisions.
Yeah.
Knows where that
businesses make decisions based on numbers, and in a lot of the decisions businesses make based on numbers can be more chilling than this, right? Like airlines at a certain point have to decide what % chance of their equipment failing are they willing to accept if it's very, very, very low, and the chance of like everybody just dying on the plane compared to the cost, which gets higher and higher and higher comparatively to get out these 1 in a million chances from happening, and to reduce it just a little bit more. So and like insurance, a lot of other things have to make the math out of people's life and death. So compared to that, this is a lot lower stakes situation where they make math out of losing people who are very upset about the things that are happening with AI, and rightly so, versus savings. But I don't think that's what WoTC was doing here, just based on the speed of their response and the way that everything happened. I don't think they were actually intentionally trying to use AI to save money. I think that they kind of bungled into it.
I mean, I agree with your assessment. I don't think it was intentional. However, the speed of their response, I don't necessarily think is a strong argument that it wasn't intentional, because if you look at the OGL and how slow they were to respond, that was bad. And I think they've learned from that, and they know that Scandal, say something quickly. Let's go. War room. Everybody in the war room. We are not leaving here until we have a response and a draft. So I think they might have learned something about responding quickly to some of this stuff, But I agree. I don't think it was intentional. That would.
I don't think it was. And to be honest, look, ever I see people saying they're saving money, they're not saving money. I mean, like the art budgets. I mean, okay, yes, art is expensive, but for WoTC, they actually pay really well. In fact, one of my artists that I use does a lot of work for WoTC, and they wrote me and said that WoTC just increased their rates for a specific type of art, and that he was raising his rates on me too. So I was like, damn it. So like they're actually paying really, really well. And we're talking about savings of a couple of $1,000. Right. Art is not that expensive in the scheme of things. It is literally a couple of $1,000. We're not talking about, if we, print 1 million books versus 100,000 books, we're talking, that's hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. Here we're talking about, if we have the AI artists do it and we then have to art direct it and spend time fixing it up, as opposed to hiring someone to do artwork for our page for a couple $100, that's it. Like it's not worth it. I mean, it's really, it's incredibly small amount in comparison.
Yeah, and artwork you generally pay for once and you get the rights, unless there's some sort of ongoing license. But you generally, like the way we do it, we pay for it once. What's your fee? There we go. We own it. We can use it in our publications. We'll always credit you, obviously, but we can use it in our publications, And so like you pay, say you pay $600 for a piece of artwork, you own it. It's yours. You can use it, But what is the cost what's the brand damage cost? What's the public relations cost? What's the, like if you get involved in another scandal after scandal, it's like, this adds up, right? And there are people that keep walking away and they keep getting upset and will stop buying your product. And those are customers you lose. So like, there's a huge cost to that. So at the level they're operating at, like, I mean, for me, like, I don't know if I want like a piece of artwork, it might be $500 or something, to me, that's a big deal. And if I got to fill a book up with that, that's $10,000, $20,000. That's a big deal for me. For WoTC, that's nothing. They probably pay their artists. They have like really good artists, so they're probably paying more than I pay. But still,
I'm sure they are. WoTC
well.
actually pays, especially for Magic art. Like from what I've seen from artists themselves reporting what they're paid, WoTC pays significantly more than anybody else in the industry to the same artist for something similar, especially if it's on a Magic card.
Yeah. So they're definitely paying more, but still, when you compare that with their revenue,
oh yeah, they can afford it.
It's a drop in the bucket,
Compared to the percentage that you are paying in art, it's way more from what you're putting up for that art than the percentage that WoTC is. So, but that's the reason why yet another reason why I really don't think they were trying to intentionally use AI as a cost saver on art, because if they were actually scrimped on their art budget, there are other things that they could have done, but I don't think they were. And I think it was just some degree of them messing up or not paying enough attention, or only finding out by a time when whoever was the decision maker said, it's not worth it to change it at this point.
So Aaron Mortar said the one dinosaurs went through an AI filter. Concept artist was unaware and not credited. So yeah, I did.
So what do you know about the dinosaur situation, Stephen? I know more about the giant situation.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the dinosaur.
Supposedly that's the story, is that there was a dinosaur that was created and then it was run at, but who ran it? I don't know who ran it. Is that it was run through an AI film.
The artist claims it wasn't them.
Right, but we don't know who it was. Like, was it the art director at WoTC? Was it another? I mean, it could be anyone. Like, sometimes I will get art, and I will ask another artist to even clean it up a little, especially if it has something that I can't do in Photoshop. And it could be as simple as, I'll give you an example. Like, if I have a piece of art and an artist drew a really good character, but they have flames coming off of the piece, flames can be very hard to do, like, anything natural like that. But I have another artist who's really good at flames, so I might ask them to, increase the flames and make them look a little better. And they're very much, everyone's aware of what's happening. The original artist, first of all, if I buy it and I own the art, I can do anything I want with it, just FYI, including modify it. So if I'm paying that artist for the rights, I now own it. I can also, that also includes me modifying the art. So that's something interesting. That's another interesting wrinkle to this. The original artist does get credited. The new artist can be credited. Sometimes they don't want to be. But again, that's no different than Hollywood script writing. And if you think about it, scripts are rewritten all the time. This is the same thing. It's also no different than me being the art director of taking your art and putting it through filters to pump up certain colors to make it more saturated and stuff. And it doesn't look like, quote, the original art. But it's my, it's my right to be able to do that, especially if I own the art and I can do anything I want with it. So the question is, was it put through an AI filter and the concept artist was unaware and not credited? Well, it depends. If the dinosaur is owned by WoTC and they paid for full rights, and they can do anything they want to it. And he could complain, but believe it or not, that might be against his contract, because it's like, well, you can't even do that because you sold us the rights. It's ours. We can do anything we want with it. It's no different than I forgot what his name is, who sold Superman for $300 or $200 to DC Comics, and they've made a little bit more than $200 on the concept of Superman. A lot of these lawsuits have gone through where people will sell the rights to their work for a couple $100, couple thousand, and then the company then makes millions or billions or trillions off of those works. And, but you sold the full rights. There's nothing you can do. And that actually went to court recently. As the original heirs wanted more money for the rights for Superman, they lost because they're like, well, they signed it away. At the time, it seemed like a lot, and it's unfortunate that's what happens. So we also had Blanca wrote, ABT creating a streamlined process for the future. Not exactly sure if that's a question.
Blanco has written a few things and seems to think that it was intentional, but because they were trying to make a process to churn out art quickly for the future. I really don't think so. Just if that's what they actually wanted to do, then when they got caught for it and people were upset about it, like they wouldn't have quickly been like, no, just period, no, end of story. They would have probably dug in a little bit more. I don't really agree with the idea that they were trying to create a pipeline of fast churn.
I don't think so either.
That just doesn't strike me at all to be similar to what they've done in terms of how they've been dealing with art.
And WoTC puts the artist's name on the pages for their books. They actually credit each piece, which is actually really hard to do. So I don't think any of this was intentional. I think it could have been as simple as them trying something out and to see how it looks, because AI art does have a very specific style to it that isn't necessarily bad. It's actually interesting if used correctly. It has sort of a dimensionality to it that you can't easily get through hand drawing. And, maybe they were just trying something new. Maybe they're trying to give an otherworldly feel to these creatures, and AI art's good at that. So I gotta let my dog in. You guys talk.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that, we've covered, our main takes on this. Now, Scavian says, I think Poland had something similar with the Witcher game rights. The author wanted more for it, but Poland's laws are different. I forget the outcome.
Yeah, so what happened is...
So I think what happened there is the author just thought it was going to... What I heard, the author thought that the game was going to be, a flop, and so went for, a lump sum instead of a percentage.
Correct.
And then the game was...
but
one of the most popular games ever made, and that was a bad decision, but it's too late now.
But at that point, I would ask, and I know nothing about The Witcher, so this is purely like Luke's brain thinking. But at that point, it's like, okay, so the author sold the rights for cheap, let's say. Okay, now then that company took those rights and they made a crazy successful game, like Trilogy or whatever it is, right? But you have to ask yourself, was it crazy successful because the author's original concept was a winning, amazing thing? Or is it all of the work that company did to market it, to build it up, and to do all these things? You know what I mean?
It's both.
Yeah. It could be totally both, right? But it's like just because somebody had a cool idea, it doesn't mean that everything that resulted after it was based on the cool idea, right? There's a lot of work that goes on after the fact that gets done, that helps.
People are also mentioning that the author won the lawsuit in Poland.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
Europe too. I think there's probably
it says here is that the Witcher author licensed. So they got a licensing. They did a new licensing agreement. So what happened is he sued them because he said he was owed $16 million in royalties. But he literally wrote, the guy who wrote the book in 2000. Way back in 2008, the first one, he says, I was stupid enough to sell them the rights to all my novels. They offered me a percentage of the profits, and he said, no, there will be no profits at all.
Yeah,
just give me
and he
all
sold
my
it for
money
like
now.
$9,000 because he just thought he didn't have any faith in the books.
Right. So the way,
it down.
Yeah, the way these work, because I've been in these type of deals. The way it works is simple. You either say like, this is it. You say, okay, I'll tell you what. We will buy the rights to your book for $1,000 or something ridiculously cheap, and we will give you a percentage of royalties. But the royalties usually only come after they make back all of their costs. So the chance of you getting anything is pretty small. Or we'll give you $100,000 and we could do anything with your work whatsoever. And so it's like, well, you have to decide, is it worth a big one-time payment? And let me tell you, 9 times out of 10, they don't even make the game. Okay? They don't even bother. So you'd rather do the one-time payment.
Yeah.
So
this sounds to me like somebody sold me like an expensive car, right? And I paid like $20,000 for the car. But 2 years later, it became a rare collectible and the valuation went up to $2 million. And then that person comes back and says, wait a second, I sold you that car for too cheap. You owe me money because the car's worth more now, And that might not be a perfect analogy, but it's like the dude literally chose which of the two he wanted. Like he made the decision. Nobody forced him to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even worse than in your metaphor because of the fact that it would be like you bought the car for $20,000 and then you went around like to car shows being like, look at this car. It's should be a collectible. And then it became a collectible entirely based on that, which also meant that some of the other the car parts that guy sells became more popular as well. But I looked it up, and while people in our chat said that the author won, what I'm finding is that they settled for an undisclosed
he didn't win.
amount.
They settled in,
which is probably a lot lower than what he asked for, just to make it go away in case, just not taking the risk, which like seems like a smart move to settle to me.
Yeah, well, but then you know what? It goes the other way. So what happened was Peter Jackson had a payment structure for the Lord of the Rings movies where he was getting a big percentage of those movies from the distributor. And the Lord of the Rings movies made so much money that after they paid him something like $200 million, they just stopped paying. They literally said, you have enough money. We're done. We're done paying you. And he sued them. And he's like, no, you owe me more. This is making billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
You owe me more money. And they just stopped. They're like, nope, we're done.
Did they lose?
They lost.
They obviously agreed to pay more.
Yeah, but the point is they... okay, I'll give you even a crazier... I'll give you a real-world example. This one's terrible. Okay, this happened to my dad. Okay. So my dad...
more real because it happened to Steven's dad.
Well, well, those are real world, but
Steven Jackson is actually, people don't know this, he's one of the characters in The Lord of the Rings.
Yes, no. But you know what I mean? Like, it's a sort of abstracted, but here, when I tell you this is chilling, all right? My dad's a periodontist, he retired, and he had a partner, and they took out disability insurance. So if you can no longer work, they will pay you a percentage of your income forever. And he took out 3 policies for each of them. and something happened to his partner, and his partner couldn't work anymore. And one of the policies, now remember, they took the money. They were very happy taking the money, and it was very expensive. They just decided to not pay it. They're like, yeah, we're not paying you. It's like, what do you mean you're not paying? It's like, not paying you. That's it.
It's an insurance company.
The insurance company's just like, we're not going to pay you. We don't believe you're disabled. And they had to go to court, had to sue them. It took years, and they ended up getting less than they wanted. And it was just cheaper for the billion-dollar insurance company to just not pay them, drag it out, and pay them less in the long run to actually pay him the full amount. Right. And the other thing is, thank God he's like, thank God we had 3 policies, because the other 2 policies did pay out. He says, but if this was our only policy, we would have been in trouble, and that would have been terrible. But that's the thing. It's like, they're just like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. Sue me.
Yeah, well, that's what they're counting on the person who won't sue them, right? Or that they'll win, or they'll scare them with scary lawyer talk and stuff.
Well, not even that. They ended up losing. So, in other words, I'm just making up the numbers. Like, imagine they had to pay out $5 million for the rest of his life. Like, we're not going to pay it. They ended up suing him, and then they ended up getting like $4 million or $3 million for the rest of the life.
Sure, but the other 99 times out of 100 they do it, people decide not to sue and they just bend over and take it or something, So they're just
even if it's 50-50, it's probably worth the legal fees because of how many millions that they will owe.
By the way, so Glavin Riven just said, oh, Stevenson's story time. Drive-through RPG's vague vendor-based AI art policy makes sense now with WoTC as their biggest vendor. I'm not sure what is their AI policy drive-through RPG.
I saw something about it. My memory sucks, but they put something out not too long ago. It was like a week or so ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. A lot of companies are basically saying we don't do it. but even that's kind of weird, because it's like, okay, well, how do you prove that I did it? Because some of this AI art, again, I can tell the bad AI art, but can you tell the good AI art? A good example is movies. You know how much movies are done with CG now? Like everything. Like they're not in studios. Half the time when you see people together talking, they're not in the same room. Like everything is done virtually. And this happens a lot. Like they might have people that are in different parts of the world because they need reshoots. So they'll literally shoot them. They'll have them go to a studio, go to a green screen, shoot them doing their scenes, then CGI them into the scene with 2 other people, and you can't even tell. It's like there's so much CGI in movies now and TV that you can't even tell 90% of the time when it's actually there. So how will you be able to even
policy, tell? According to a different Linda Codega article, the policy is that you have to disclose if you used AI.
Okay.
In the product at all, any part of their game, rulebook, or adventure containing AI generated content, and they will not accept standalone artwork products using AI generated art, such as stock art, token packs, maps, portraits, or miniatures.
Got it.
It's allowed for use in rulebooks and adventures, but must be tagged.
Okay.
That's what it said.
Yeah. And what about the artists themselves? Like, that's what I said. It's like, okay, we're talking about the companies, but what happens if I'm working with an artist and they use it? That's why I asked for so many stages, and also why I asked for layered art, is that so I can trust them and I know that they're doing it by hand, because that's also a problem. It's like, what happens if I hire someone, I think their art looks really good, and then all of a sudden they use AI for some part, because maybe I asked them, because okay, in my field, we're asking for weird things. I'm like, okay, draw a Medusa with a flaming longsword killing a, giant turtle. I mean, it's like, the reference for those is obscure and weird. So maybe they have to look up and use a reference for a giant turtle, and they use that AI and they kind of trace it over. Is that AI art? Is that, I mean, I might not know the artist did that because they're having trouble drawing the turtle that I asked for in this art, and they don't want to not do it. So
this is a weird question, but what if the artist isn't familiar, like you said, with these things that you're asking for, and they go out and they look at other artwork online, to get an idea of what's a Medusa look like. Oh, okay. What's a flaming sword? Like,
Mhm.
and they look at all these things, and then they use that to like, create what they actually created. Like this is probably like an ignorant, uninformed question, but like AI artwork scrapes online content, right?
Right.
And pulls it in. So at what point is, even if an artist is going out and looking at other people's artwork and then creating their own thing, you know what I mean? They're looking for inspiration from others, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't think it's the same thing, but I think
it's in their
there's
own
learning,
style. That's
right?
the difference.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in
And
the, yeah.
you're right that I have seen multiple times human artists overfitting a reference art piece.
Mhm.
I think one of my stories is my journey to try to get a picture of the iconic Pathfinder barbarian Amiri fighting the frost giant who dropped a giant-sized bastard sword that she uses as her iconic weapon because she killed this frost giant and took its sword. And the problem is that the sample art of a frost giant in Pathfinder has an axe. So every time I would make a brief, and I actually tried to do it 3 times, where I said, okay, so I want something. It should look vaguely like this reference art piece, except for it's not using an axe. It's using a big sword, which looks like the sword that the barbarian uses in all of her other art. Now, she should not have that sword yet because she's going to kill this giant and get it. And I never got that. The giant always had the axe and had it all 3 times. So that is an example of them just like kind of using the concept piece more than not the reference piece more than I wanted them to. But they still drew it in their style. Like they weren't like copying the art style and like the brush strokes.
Yeah. Was this an
The
actual
reference
artist?
piece.
This was an actual artist doing this, right?
Yeah, this was a human artist long before
understand.
AI art was possible.
Right. So when you literally told them not a battle axe, a sword, they still didn't get it right.
Yes, and this is a good example of you can't make the change if you just can't make the change because I tried to ask for an art change and it was like, well, it's too late. So
there gets to be a point where it's like
that's a good example of the
if you
like
want me to
I
make
think that it's sort of
change,
wrong.
I'm gonna have
but
to redo the whole thing. So that's not happening. Yeah.
yeah,
I get
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
yeah, I get it too. And it also like it was a piece of art and it didn't have a caption or like it didn't say that this was definitely the time that the iconic barbarian Amiri got her sword from the giant. So it changed from that iconic moment in her backstory to just she is fighting a giant who has an axe. And that was fine. And like the point was like to get the change would have been very difficult and it was usable in its current state. It just wasn't the thing that I was looking for from it. So that's a good example of the fact that they definitely do use reference art or other art pieces, but it always looked like a different artist drew it, completely different brush strokes. Every time I got this giant that was too close to the reference piece.
Yeah. I mean, I use reference stuff for the things I do all the time. Like I was literally looking through your book here, guys. And I'm like, how did they structure and format things? How did they lay this out? What's their table of contents and how did they, okay. So adventure background, adventure synopsis. Oh, this is pretty cool. All right. I mean, so I'm like looking at stuff like that. I might, when I'm writing, it's like, I think artists are always looking for reference artwork. You know what I mean? It's just normal. Like I've said before that creativity in a void is difficult, because we need to be inspired somehow. One way or another, generally speaking.
I always have to send samples and examples because not only that, most of my artists are overseas and some of them don't even have the same culture as we do. So if I'll ask for something, they might color it a color that's similar, that's very common. Let's say for the Eldamon, this happened a lot because we have things like fire and spirit and mind, and in Asia and other parts of the world, the colors for those are different than, quote, the color for those elements in our part of the world, which is fascinating. So I had to specifically label what it should look like, what color it should be, and give references because they were using Asian culture and references for their elements, which is not the same.
I mean,
And-
we also didn't use only Western colorations.
No, yeah, we didn't just
so
use
for instance, like we
Western.
had death as white,
Right.
which Western death would be black.
Correct. Right. But that was something else, right? We tried to mix and match, so it was
But
a
we
combination.
also had darkness as a different element, which obviously needed to
be dark.
know?
But
Yeah.
right. But the point is like, is death a skull? Is it a skull and crossbone? Is it a sickle? Is it a grim reaper?
Right.
Is it, it could be multiple things in multiple cultures. And something this happens a lot is I will reference something that's popular in American culture, but then our, Europeans will be like, what's that? And I literally have to show them what it is because they've never heard of it before. Look at Krampus. Like Krampus is standard in European cultures. It's a staple of them growing up and celebrating Christmas. Until a couple years ago, I don't even know if anyone even heard of Krampus in the United States. It's so, I think the biggest influence of Krampus was the Venture Brothers, because Krampus was in one of their episodes. Other than that, it doesn't really exist. So, but that's another thing. You got to make sure you give your artists, the more references, the better, especially if you want them, because the worst part about not the worst part, the most difficult part about working with artists is that you might have something in your mind's eye of what it should look like, and they just don't even come close, and then you have to end up having them redo it multiple times. So you got to be very careful with that.
Yep. If you're lucky, you get something amazing that you never would have expected because their perspective as an artist brings something in, and you're like, yes, this works, and it isn't what I thought of, but it's good.
So David Green asks, how much info do you usually give for your art direction? For me, a lot. Actually, I've been told I give probably more than anyone they've worked with. But
I'm sure you do, on account of the fact that when I gave an amount that I used to give a lot when I started at Paizo, I didn't know what I was doing with art direction, and I was kind of unleashed to write some briefs, and like I got some notes from, to explain it to me from Paizo's art team, being like, you should put less detail in this because the artists, like Steven said, often from many different countries, so use fewer details and don't tell them what to do so much because they're the artist and they can figure out the composition, but get the points that you need for the rules to be right and let them do the rest. And so I gave something that was still on the upper end when Steven was asking me for descriptions. Steven's like, oh, you can go much longer than that. And so I know you do more than most people do. And but you get results.
Well, I also do the composition in my mind. I mean, you see, because we're literally working on some right now, and you saw the sketch, and we had a sketch that was of a wrestler of one of the what are we calling them again, Mark? The Cerebrates?
The cerebrophages.
Cerebrophages. So the cerebrophage was a wrestler, and he was like this, and he was okay. But then I sent it to you, and then I sent back to the artist, and I said, I gave him, there's like a wrestler pose. I said, have him hunch down more, lower center of gravity, look like he's ready to jump on you, and really going at it, and make his legs squared so it looks better. And
he's ready to wrestle you and eat your brain.
Right, eat your brains. And you looked at it and you're like, wow, that's way better. And that's all I had to do. But I was able to do that art direction. Again, but that's what an art director does. They know and they can picture the scene in their mind, as opposed to someone who, for you, I'm just looking for details like, are they wielding a sword or an axe? What are they wearing, heavy armor or light armor? I need that from you, but I will take care of the context and where people are standing and what positions they're in. What are you going to say, Luke?
Yeah, so like when I was working directly with the artists, I would give like 3 sentences maybe. I would give them an idea of what I want in the background, what the foreground should be, and describe it. But I almost never sent a reference image unless they didn't know what it was. Like they're like, what is the Medusa? Okay, I will Google it. I will find an image that I can link you to. There we go. You know, but generally speaking, it's a few sentences, and then they would throw me a sketch and stuff. And I'm kind of simple to please with artwork. If they send me something and it's what I was asking for and it looks cool, I'm like, that's awesome. Like that's why I just want something that looks amazing, that looks cool, that looks well done. Like you don't have to fulfill my vision for what it is, because I don't have a vision. I I have a few sentences and I want it to look cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fine too. I mean, keep in mind, I've been working with my artists, some of them for years now. So we have a system. They know what I'm going to give them. They know what I expect from them. And they also know though that I do a lot ahead of time so that they don't have to do corrections later. They would rather give me 2 or 3 sketches than have to change color, because changing color sucks. That they do not want to do. So they would much rather give me a couple sketches and then I approve the sketch.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, once they get to the colored stage and they give you
it's usually too late at that point.
Usually too late. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do I do several paragraphs? It depends, but keep in mind, I actually do leave it up to the artist's imagination. But for example, for a cover, I will give a lot of detail. Because like a cover, I want exactly what I want. It also, I need to have very specific space at the top and bottom, and I need specific space for the bleeds. Like I need a lot of details. For the borders, I give a lot of detail for borders. But if I need a lot of the pictures I've had in the like the World of Battles, some of the art. Okay, let's look at the art on this right here. So the art that you're looking at on this page right here, on the right side is the God of Law and Order, and I said, okay, I wanted him to be in his 40s and have a beard, long hair, sort of fatherly looking, and kind of a little happy, and that's what I got. And then on the right side, that's Lilith, the mother. I said late 30s, and she should be a little bit more stern, also long hair, and I wanted her to be a little bit more serious because she's actually little evil.
She's more chaotic.
She's chaotic.
He's very, very lawful and like, right. I'll get things in order.
Right. So but I also gave the colors because his colors are blue and white, and hers are white and blue. So that's how come the colors are there. So you could see
that's why they're reversed. You can see on their clothing because they are sort of complement, but are the opposite of each other in a lot of ways. But you can also see that their skin tone, which is kind of like a very, I would say it's like kind of an in-betweeny tone that might also like the outfit that the mother is wearing looks vaguely Middle Eastern.
Yeah, I gave Middle Eastern / Roman is what we're using for them. We're kind of doing a combo. Mesopotamian, Roman, Greek is kind of what I asked for, and that's where we got. So, but this is that's the level. Like Luke's probably like, make him look like a dude wearing a robe. I go into, I'm not making fun of you, Luke, but I go into a lot of detail. You'd see that's the level of detail I go into. Even I want them wearing sandals. I'm very specific.
I don't have time to be that specific. And also,
that only took me 3 minutes because I could picture it. But keep in mind, this is what I do, and I'm trained in this. It would be the same way you said to me you wrote a dungeon in a few hours. I could not write a dungeon in a few hours. It would take me days because that is what you're skilled at. This is something I like to think I'm skilled at. I can picture in my mind's eye what I want it to look like and write it down very quickly and give it to the artists.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. Yeah. Somebody in chat. They made kind of a question, but they said, so now a small publisher has little to no choice but to have artwork accompanied in their books now. I mean, as a general rule, you kind of need artwork in your books if you're going to publish it. But what does a small publisher do? Like the dude who's just himself as a side hustle, who doesn't even have money for one piece of artwork, let alone to fill out a book.
It's very difficult.
No, it's actually not difficult at all. This is what they already do this. I'm not giving shade on him, but DM Dave uses, and I think you do this with Lair, don't you use a lot of
Adobe stock?
Yeah, Adobe stock art.
We pay for it. It's licensed. It's not AI generated. Because in Adobe stock, Adobe requires you when you upload something to say whether it's AI generated or not. So you can tell. I mean, it's self-reporting, which is what are you going to do? But at least you can be as careful as you can be and say, this is stock art, it's licensed, it's not AI generated. But that's what you have to do. For our books, when we publish a book as a Kickstarter, that's all custom art, right? But that's the purpose of the Kickstarter, to help raise the funds so you can afford that, because it's $20,000+ to fill a book with artwork, But for the monthly Layer magazine, I mean, shoot, we have 60+ pages in it. Almost every page has a piece of art. If it's not a map, cartography, which is still art, it's a different piece of art, you know. And if I have,
Photography can be even more expensive.
I pay. Yeah, it can be, definitely. Yeah, it depends on who you got doing it, but it certainly
Yeah.
can. But if I have a piece of artwork on every single page, and let's just make an even number and say it's $500 for every piece of artwork. Do the math. 500 times 60, right? Like that's a lot of money for the artwork. And then you got, so yeah, there are other options like stock artwork. You know, there's the artwork that's just, what do they call it when it's not, you don't even have to have a license, it's just out there and you can use it. What do they call that? There's a name for it, there's a term for it. Somebody knows what it is.
Creative
Like
Commons.
Not Creative Commons.
Yeah, like there's some artwork that's free that's
I'm not
out
sure.
there that can be used. There's stock art. Those are both pretty good options depending on
For use.
what you're doing with
Public
your product.
domain, one of those.
Public
Yeah.
domain. That's what I'm doing.
Public domain, royalty free.
Public
Yeah,
domain
yeah.
can work. If your
Yeah.
product is something that has a license that allows for art, for example, on Paizo's Pathfinder Infinite and Starfinder Infinite, you do have to give a larger cut away than if you're just on Drive Through RPG in general. So you do pay 50% instead of 30 to 35% away. But it does have art assets that you're allowed to use that you can just use on your product there. You can also try to go lighter on art, but that's a dangerous double-edged sword that could come back to bite you because people expect a lot of art and they also just they don't want to have to pay for books that much. It's something that like my parents were actually asking me about it recently because they didn't understand like the business model or how things worked and how things made money. And I tried to explain to them that people just won't pay very much for a book that took huge amounts of effort and design and all of these steps and processes and art. But and they're like, oh well, but you know, like my little brother was talking about it. He's like, yeah, but these other gamers are like who are into Star Wars or other things like that might pay a huge amount for something else. And I was like, look, the same gamers might spend $100 on a set of dice or miniatures or like terrain for their game. They just for some reason people don't want to pay for books. So you're in a tricky spot for art, and you need to, if you're small, you need to find ways to figure it out. And I think that the advice we've said here is those are pretty much your only options if you don't want to lose a lot of money, because commissioning your own new art, you're going to lose a ton of money on that if you're small and you don't get a lot of sales. And most people don't get a lot of sales.
Right. Most people don't. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
If you're spending, like, even if you're doing like 50 pages, you know, and you have artwork all over the place, you could easily spend $20,000 on artwork, you know, depending on what you're paying per piece and all that kind of stuff. You know,
and if it's spot art, maybe less. Maybe, you know, the little spot arts that are just like a piece of treasure or something that's not like a full body or a half page
prop or something. Yeah. But like, imagine like one PDF that you're going to put out there. You pay $20,000 for artwork. Like most people, unless you're like big, you're never going to get that money back ever, even over the lifetime, unless you have solid marketing, brand presence, you're an actual, you know what I mean? You know what you're doing. You're not going to get back, you know?
So we only have like 5 minutes because I got to go.
All right.
I will say,
what's the bottom line, everybody, in art?
The bottom line is that this is the beginning stages and that the rules are still being defined. And right now it looks like using AI art that's obviously AI art is a no-no. But using AI art as a very fine-tooth combed tool set is still okay. And I think they just want people to be clear on what you're using. And if I say, well, my artists are artists and they're real artists and real people, but they do use Photoshop to clean up their artwork, but like everyone else does in this world, that's probably okay. As opposed to I'm using an AI generated algorithm online and paying for, one of the million AI tool sets out there that will automatically generate art by scraping and doing advanced autofill of other people's artwork. So I think that's where we're at right now.
Yep, that's a good summary.
So anyhow, do check out my Kickstarter, please. Speaking of art, 280 pages, man. You know how much art is in there? Got a lot of art. It's like hundreds and hundreds of pieces of art. And it's a lot of maps and art and flags, and it's too much. Too much art. Dragons, everything, man. Way too much art. And it's all, and if you back the Kickstarter, you get it all digitally, so you can put it into your VTT. So you get tens of thousands of dollars worth of art for pennies. Or for not even that. It's a kind of amazing, and then you can reuse it forever. For
you were very generous about those. I know that, like, when you look at, like, say, like the bestiary pack or other art asset packs that I've seen on Foundry from Paizo or other people, are, like, pretty meaty once you have enough pieces of art in it. And one thing that we've done at Roll for Combat based on Steven's policy is that those are always included in these Kickstarters as an added on for free, which is a lot of additional value.
Now, Mithril Forge completely disagrees with my summary. Oh, okay. Well, I'm curious what your summary is. My summary is I'm not exactly sure right now, because they I don't know. I mean, right now AI art is still it's very much in the infancy. I think it's actually very harmful to artists. But this is happening. Like, I have a lot of friends who are doctors, and they're starting to get worried because their job, like, these are, you know what it is that these are people who picked their careers 20 years ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago, thinking there was no way some machine could take over their job. And suddenly it's happening very fast. And I mean, it's like, can someone take over a doctor job? Come on, really, a doctor? Well, it's starting to happen.
So it sounds like, unless I'm mistaken, it sounds like the primary argument against AI artwork is that it's stealing from artists, right? And it's taking their artwork and, stealing from that. Sounds like the primary
That's
argument.
one of the main primary issues, is that it steals from them.
Right. So the next follow-up to that is, okay, so what happens when AI generated artwork isn't doing that anymore?
Correct.
It's literally able to create it itself. It's unique, not scraped, not based on anything else. Is then it going to be okay? Because at the heart of the issue, like, I understand we're saying it's stealing. Okay, great. But at the heart of the issue, the very core of the issue is lots of people, their livelihood is at stake, right? Like, if AI artwork can just create it and there's no longer a stealing problem, it's going to potentially replace what they're doing, right? And then they're not going to have a livelihood. It's the same thing if you were a telephone operator, that, like, manual unplugged cords and put the cords in, that became obsolete a long time ago. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. If you're a gas pump, you pump gas. That's what you do. You're the gas attendant. You know what I mean? That doesn't exist anymore, except for, I think, in New Jersey, maybe. Right. So, like,
yeah, they definitely have it in New Jersey.
Right. So that's the question. What happens when it's no longer stealing and it's just completely creative? AI can do it on its own. You know what I mean? So I feel like, for me personally, the core of the issue is, the real core is people losing their livelihoods. You know what I mean?
So I'll wrap this up kind of, and then we'll give some plugs. That this first started, this whole thing with AI stealing humans' jobs, first started over 100 years ago, and this was one of the biggest court cases in the world back in the day, and that was player pianos. Is that people were furious about the player piano, because here was a device that was replacing people who are obviously very skilled at playing the piano, and they were getting jobs at bars and restaurants, very popular back in the 1900s and 1800s. And suddenly you can buy a device that would automatically play the piano for you. And this was a huge fight going on. You can look this up. I think it went to, like, the Supreme Court. I mean, it was big fights over player pianos. And this has been around forever, and it always will be. The problem is that it's hard when it happens to you. Right. And now it's happening to artists and doctors and programmers and musicians and actors, which is really something that no one would have thought about even 10, 15, 5 years ago, to be honest. It's just, it happened very fast.
Right. And that is why I made that quip for the very beginning of the live stream about when AI puts us all out of work, we'll have tons of time to sit around on our government stipends playing games. Because like if AI is going to replace a whole bunch of people, like you'll have 80% of the population that can't get work. Well, there are still the same number of resources out there. You know what I mean? So like if you can't get work and you can't make money, like it's not like you're just gonna like go starve in a corner. You know, there's got to be a solution to that. So that's why I made that quip, because it's looking like more and more as AI is doing stuff. It's like, geez, like I mean, I publish products, right? Like what happens when AI can create adventures and stuff? When AI can do layout and artwork and just create an entire book at a prompt. Like I could go in and be like, create me a dungeon about this, that, and the other for level 5 Pathfinder 2, and it does it, and it has read aloud text and everything. And when that is a thing and it's actually well done, why are people going to buy my products?
Yeah.
You know what
Well,
I mean?
this has always happened, and the biggest issue is that this has happened throughout all of time, especially in the last 100 years, when you had mechanical parts being made and machining, and suddenly people worried about that. It's happened with the loom, and people worry about that. Like, there's always been some device that has put someone else out of business. The usually good thing is that will usually make new opportunity and new jobs. And these are jobs that no one's ever... They always say this is the top jobs that are going to be out in the next 10 years don't exist today. And they say that all the time, and it's true. It's like the jobs that are going to be the top 20, 50 jobs next 10, 20 years don't exist. We don't even know what they are because they're going to be created. The issue is that it's starting to replace people who spent their entire lives learning these skills. And that's why I use the player piano, because people spend their entire lives learning to play the piano. So suddenly a machine was able to take their livelihood. Now artists who spend their whole life becoming artists, or, you know, an actor who literally their identity is being stolen by computers, or doctors who literally have to spend like 10 to 12 years training and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to become a doctor are being replaced. Like this is what's scaring people, because it's not like, right, oh, you're just replacing me with, you know, a machine that can do my job and I can go retrain, you know, that, but it was a job that only took a year or two to learn anyhow, or 6 months, you know?
And that's my point. That's the actual core of this issue, right? That's what it's all about, right? Whatever the actual reason is reason, but the core is people's livelihoods, you know? And what's scary though, and what could be scary, is like, historically, did you have something that came along that replaced like lots of people's livelihoods very quickly? Or was it a slow thing? Oh, the gas pump attendants are gone. Oh, okay, get new jobs. Okay, the operators are gone. Go get new jobs. But what happens when it's artists, it's writers, it's programmers, it's doctors, it's a whole swath of society that very quickly out of a job? That's like an abrupt adjustment that's going to be a lot harder for society to adapt to, it seems like. Right?
Yeah, well, disruption of technology usually we used to take 20 years, which is a long time. It is this, and that was a standard. It's always been going down, but in the last couple of decades is vastly accelerated to years to months. And that is the problem, is that it suddenly seemed to go from, oh, AI could do artwork to AI could do artwork. And it seemed like no one was using it like 2 or 3 years ago, and now everyone can use it. And no one was using ChatGPT, and then suddenly everyone was. And because of the internet, it suddenly, you know, new technologies can propagate in 2 to 3 years, as opposed to 10 to 20 years. And that's what's scaring everyone. And it scares me. I'm scared.
It's the opposite.
I'm very scared myself.
It's the opposite of the utopian views of automation in the future, where it was just like, you know, machines will be able to do like very...
Well, they thought they were going to do menial work.
They were going to do very drudgish, busy work for you, so that humans can focus on the creative activities that are so quintessentially things that humans do and not machines. And instead, it's like, well, we'll have the machines do music and art and writing so that you can spend more time focusing on your office job.
Yep. I know. Well,
right?
yeah.
It's like the
I know
opposite.
it's getting scary. Trust me, I'm scared myself because it's like everything can be replaced, and hopefully,
one of my
hopefully they
friends
don't.
who does the same thing we do, publishing books and stuff. He was like, "Luke, we're gonna get replaced eventually. What's the solution?" And I looked at him. I was like, "Make as much money as fast as you can, because when we don't have a job, baby, you don't have a job." I don't know. I didn't have a response. Like, what are you gonna do?
I don't have I unfortunately don't even have a good response myself, because it's what anything you think is unique is not going to be unique forever. Which is funny because everyone always is like, "Oh, self-driving cars," and that's the golden, that's the golden goose. Everyone, that one's still way off because that's so insanely complex. Because that's like that when that comes about and that really exists, this all will have passed, and then that's in my mind when we're really in trouble. When that actually there's 5 stages for driving cars. Level 5 is basically us. But we're not up to, I think they're up to they just reached stage 3, barely. And they're most self-driving cars are in stage 2 right now, if you want to look that up. Anyhow, I gotta go, because I got a meeting I'm already late to.
All right.
Go to the Secret Art of Game Mastery tomorrow. I put the link on there. I'm sure you'll see it. I'm sure Luke will be promoting it. I'll have you on again, Luke, the next month. Go to ours, please. Indigo.rollforcombat.com or Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com. It's only around for another 10 days or so, and I guarantee you will like it if you like dragons or islands or pirates or really, really interesting cities, towns, islands. Bob Worldbuilder will be on next week. He wrote one of the islands, and other than that, I gotta go.
All right,
Bye everyone.
Bye.